Would you please give a warm Okanagan welcome to Dr. Holger Busche.
Hydrail is a combination of hydrogen railways. So it sounds a bit more like engineering stuff, which is actually the case. But there's more to this than just engineering. So it's just shifting like from steam to diesel in the late 20s, last century, from diesel to electricity with overhead catenary systems. Yeah, that looks like this in the first thing. But if you look closer to it, there's quite some magic to trains and magic to hydrogen. If you just discuss trains, it's pretty boring for the most of the people because they are not using trains. Especially if you don't have a train system like here. And the thing is, if you start having a train system, you start developing things, areas, housing, and so on. So it's the mode of connection from region to region, from city to city, is quite important for the development of a region. The other thing is, if you have hydrogen-powered trains, you shift from operational cost to investment. And that makes it interesting for a lot of people who are used to investment rather than just subsidizing something every year. So if you come to a politician and say, oh, my system is not operating beneficial, I need $1 million to support it, and you come next year, I need $1 million to support it, and you come next year, and so on and so on. They wouldn't really like this. If you go to a politician and say, well, if you once invest X million in this system, and I will never come back because it's running online, then you have a different story. Politicians love to take the scissor and open something that has you just invested in. And so the story is putting also the energy into the system. So in northern Germany, I've got a nice picture in here, and we can just send it out. It's in German, unfortunately, so I can't explain it to you, so you can't read it, sorry. But the picture is the most important thing. You see lots of wind turbines and solar panels on that picture. And the story is, in northern Germany, in Schleswig-Holstein, we already have so much renewable energy that we just don't know where to go with it. And you see this wind turbine is shut down, the solar panels are switched off because there's too much sun, too much wind in this moment. And you see a diesel engine coming by. So what's the error on that picture? So so the energy people starts talking to the railway people and say, oh, please use hydrogen, because if you store the surplus of energy into hydrogen, you easily can use it on the train. So unfortunately, until now, the technology wasn't available because the hydrogen engineers never talked to the railway engineers in the decades before that, because usually the hydrogen people are quite innovative, but not using trains, and the railway people using trains, at least sometimes, and but they are not really innovative. So all the discussion on hydrogen was going on cars. On cars you have the problem, it's quite expensive technology. How much do you use your car a day? In Germany, the average mileage of a car is 40 kilometers. So the car is staying 23 hours a day just on a parking lot. So it's not worth to invest into a car like this, in this meaning, to lower the operational costs. But on a train, you have this effect. The train is operating, say, 1,000 kilometers a day, or at least 800, even in local transportation systems. So the cost of the investment is spread out over a much higher mileage than on a car. So it's economically interesting. So suddenly these people get to each other, and the energy people popped in and said, well, we've got the energy now. 20 years ago, there was, it would have been a waste, because you have to produce from coal power plants electricity to store it into hydrogen, and lots of losses in there, and you end up with an efficiency of less than 15% or so. But now, with wind turbines, and especially with solar panels, that doesn't matter anymore. because we've got the energy, I've got the power. And so the story pops in that the people from the energy side pushed this discussion. And luckily, we have a manufacturer of rail cars in northern Germany, in Lower Saxony. And they produced this rail car called Corelia Island. And they used it to build it as a diesel rail car. And now they just produced one of them as a Hydrail rail car. And put it into service on the September 16th last month. So last month, just recently. It's happening now. So everybody of you can just jump into a plane, come over to Hamburg, drive a little bit into the countryside over there, and have a Hydrail ride. And you will see, not only see, it's more important you hear the difference. Especially if you sit there and you have been with the people sitting in there, they were talking in their used loudness of the volume that they speak up. So just like I have to speak up a bit more, like because you can hear me. And in a diesel engine, in a diesel train, you have to speak up also because it's difficult to hear you because the diesel engine makes a lot of noise. And if you go in a Hydrail train, it's just like it's sufficient that you talk in this way because everybody could understand. And if you're still talking like a diesel engine, you will be everybody will hear you what you what you just want to keep your secret. But so everybody is listening to your secrets because you are still talking in the diesel noise volume and not in the Hydrail mode. So you have to switch the passenger from the diesel mode to the Hydrail mode. That's perfect. People love that because it's silent, it's smooth. I mean, it's just like if you sit in a diesel engine, it's like in a car. And if you sit in a Hydrail, it's electric driven. It's like, and you're up to 140 kilometers per hour. So investors. So that depends on what kind of investors you're talking of. So for example, the energy side investors are quite happy with this, investing in something that needs their energy that they can't sell. So in our case, it's solar energy and it's wind power. Sometimes we have already negative prices for electricity in the grid. So they pay for you to get some electricity. So because they have so much energy in the grid and they can't shut down the old plants, so they pay you if you want to have electricity. And I don't know the situation in British Columbia, but I know in Ontario it's the same problem already. That's why they discuss Hydrail on Toronto GO Transit. British Columbia has a lot of sun also, and solar prices going down, 15 to 20% each year. So you can imagine how the prices for electricity will be in 5 to 10 years. So these are the energy side people, but it's even more exciting for people who are investing in real estate. I think it's called real estate, yeah. If you develop a region that's growing, you have the chance of developing it next to a train station. That's going to save you lots of money, or the other way around. With the same money, you get much more people to your places, so you can sell your apartments or houses or whatever you build up much better. If there are more people closer living together, you have more businesses like a cinema. I mean, a cinema in a town which has, in a radius of 10 kilometers or so, 5,000 people living will make less money. If you have in a radius of 10 kilometers, you have 50,000 people living. So getting people here who brings in money makes a region interesting to invest money. And you get people by having solved their mobility issues, whatever that is. But more and more people are not relying on the car anymore. So you can see in Germany, you can see it worldwide, where you build up, especially, for example, if you go to Vancouver, you can see it clearly. If they build up the SkyTrain, and you see a SkyTrain station that's built up new, suddenly you see popping up skyscrapers next to it, because it's able to sell these housings. That makes it so interesting, fitting into life. It's not just a technical issue from engineering for Hydrail, changing power to a train and could be a bus or whatsoever. No, you have to solve mobility issues, mobility as a service, mobility for the people, and the train gives you the space for it. The train is gives you the reliability. I mean, you can build real good train systems. The Japanese Shinkansen is average delayed by 24 seconds. So, I mean, it's just incredible how good the train system can be. And it was a big scandal in Japan in 2015, I think, when this number raised up to 54 seconds. And people were complaining that they almost missed the next train. And if they would have done so, it's incredible, the average waiting time for the next train would be 4 minutes. Because there's every 4 minutes a train. So, I mean, that's just incredible for everybody else to believe. But if you install a train system, it doesn't have to be that frequent maybe here, but if you install such a system and get this mobility issues for the next generation being solved, the next generation is going to come. So you might say everybody's got a car in here. Yeah, those people who are not having a car are not living here anymore. So that's what we are facing in Germany. So people tend to move to that places where they don't need a car.
Okay, well, you've actually touched on quality of life, so let's go there. Clearly, investors in energy, investors in stations and station and redevelopment and forming and shaping communities around stations is a reason for investors to get excited. And let's remember, even at, let's call it $5 million per mile, we're talking cheaper, by 2 or 3 versus building roads. This is still $1 billion project if we're talking between the U.S. border and Kamloops. That's big money. That's why we're talking about venture capitalists and a public-private partnership model, which is, by the way, how they built the railroad across Canada. So this is not new. And in a class just before we came here out at UBC, Holger was on the board, and I don't want to put you all to sleep, but he came up with the numbers on how you could capitalize and how a venture capitalist, even from just station redevelopments, would be able to help finance the upfront cost of the line. It's about the upfront cost. Local governments, one taxpayer, that's not in it. That's not even on the books for us right now. So how do you do it? It's P3, very much like the floating bridge was done into Kelowna. But let's talk about quality of life, driving versus riding an E-rail, Hydrail train.
Yeah, that's always the question, how much does it cost? Everybody's asking that question, but I would love to convert this question to is it worth it? So that's most important question on that, and is it worth it to whom? If
Sure, thank you.
So if there's going to be a development, the numbers you told me about people coming in here, just said something like 100,000 people coming in here. I mean, imagine. So the average apartment cost, just to make it easy to calculate, is if everybody of these 100,000 people has to pay 100,000 for an apartment, that's going to be 10 billion. So what's 1 billion? It's just 10% of that one that's invested anyhow in that area. The magic on Hydrail is, in comparison to highways or to bus systems and so on, these incredible low operational costs in comparison to the others. So once you have installed it and you put in your solar panels or the wind turbines or hydro or wherever you get your very, 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 very cheap energy from, you see you're facing very low operational costs, which makes it even possible to say, go for free ridership. Why not? Just develop this vision of free ridership for that one, because the investment is paid by somebody else, and because they are interested in investing that, because they make their money out of other businesses. like the wineries from the visitors, the shops around it from other visitors, all people live there, now new living people there, and well, the people who build the homes and the electricians and whatever. The whole economy stuff is growing, and you can spot it. But there hasn't been any major issues. So you always, if there's a pilot and a new technology, you always face some minor problems like, well, the temperature is not the one that you wanted to have. But this happened to this rail car in the diesel version also in the very beginning. Some software issues or whatever. But there hasn't been really major failures on that one, that as far as I know. So I was riding it. It was no problem to do so. It was just like a normal train. But the development chances for northern Germany are quite there, having electrified all diesel lines which we have now, and well, this is the end of the diesel engine. I mean, we will find this date, 16th of September, someday in the history books, because it's the changing of the from the internal combustion engine to completely electrification of all moving parts on the rails.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you this, but now that you've brought it up, in North America, we've got private freight trains. Almost 100% of them are diesel. What you just said about passenger rail, would that apply to this being a gateway technology for diesel freight rail?
Sooner or later, it's got to be. It's going to be. It will happen. It might be a little later than with the passenger trains and the rail cars, because the fuel cells are now in the rail cars something in the order of 200 kilowatts. And if you're talking about a diesel engine on a rail on a locomotive, we're talking about 2.5 megawatts or something like that. So 12 times as much, and you see these freight trains having 3 in the front, 2 engines in the middle, and maybe one at the end also. So we're talking about 10 megawatts. Certainly, fuel cells will be able to do so sooner or later, maybe 10 years later or 5 years later. But it's going to happen as well. There is not endless oil. I'm a geophysicist, but so I lived on looking for oil, and even in these 5 years when I was working there, I saw how it got more and more expensive to find it. So it's going to be an economical issue. There will be always oil, but we need it for plastic and medicine and everything else. And it's just too valuable to just burn it for transportation, which you can just do with any other way, like wind power, solar, and whatsoever. I love to say this, Stone Age time didn't end because there hasn't been any stones anymore. Metal was just better, so that's why Stone Age times ended. So the oil age will just end because hydrogen is going to be better. The 2 major fuel cell production sites are in Canada. So if you ever buy a fuel cell all over the world, you buy it from Canada. So one is in Toronto and one is in British Columbia. So the chance for technology is here. I mean, you export it, but you don't use it on your own. So that's a good chance to do so. Go for it. So Hydrail is good. Hydrail is especially good if you have a region with a lot of energy. Solar insolation, wind, hydro, whatsoever, clean energy, cheap energy, something like that. Hydrail is good if you develop a new railway system because you doesn't have one. Well, that's the case in here. And I just recently heard that Greyhound left. So well, there's need for transportation still, even if they left. So yes, I would say the third thing was the development of the region is positive. So people coming in here want to live here. So it's going to be that the need for the solution is there. So for my quick overview for that, I would say yes, it's a good place to do so. So what do we have to do? As I always say, in northern Germany, I was saying, well, we're not talking about the train system. We are talking about the future. And later on, you see the train system is a big part of that. It's not sufficient to put a train station somewhere and hoping everything else will go somehow. You also have to find solutions for the last mile. So building up cycle highways and for cyclists and or other kind of innovative transportation. We have nice pictures over there. I can show you later on for monowheels and all the kind of stuff. Just walking distance. So making new plans. Draw the picture how you want to live in the next years, next generation, whatever time you think. Ord and I are geophysicists, so we're thinking in millions of years, but just be faster than that, please. But the thing is, draw the picture first with all the people you get involved. Don't leave it to the engineers of railway systems or whatever. They will design a system that's pretty good, but it might be not the solution for the way of life you want to have. So if you want to have towns developed and connected well to region, or jumping from town to town to town to town, or you want something like from town to small village, town, you have to define this first. Think about how it should look like before that. There might be express solutions for in between, going every 10 minutes for the small stations, and then going every half an hour or so from long distance ways. Ask yourself how many people are moving from where to where, at which time. Ask yourself how much it's going to be if there will be a different train system. Don't look at the passengers from today. So the bus system is not the enemy. The bus system is your colleague. But it has to be changed. So buses need to go to the train station to get people over there and connect over all this. Think about ask yourself how it's going to look like. Ask yourself, can we put the railway somehow into town? So you can go regional, and then you're facing your center, whatever it is, I guess Kelowna, and then you go downtown, or whatever places of interest are around. So go to Victoria, tell them we're going to develop in a different way here. We don't do the same stuff like we ever did, because if we do what we ever did, we always get what we ever get, traffic jams. And we don't want that. If you draw this picture and say, that's going to be fancy, cool stuff, I'm pretty sure they're going to understand. And if they understand, you can move everything. And especially, as I always love to say, give it a female touch. Because it's mostly done by male. And sometimes they tend to forget children, tend to forget female needs. They have different needs. For example, shall I tell the story? I think we could go for the story. So I was giving mathematic help for children down in Germany, and there was a lady, a friend of mine, who had two daughters, something like 15, 16 years old. You are not allowed to drive in that age in Germany. And the 15-year-old was complaining, why do we have to live in this small village? You can't even get home after cinema. And the 16-year-old, having lip gloss, long hair, colored, and so on, was staying there like, well, oh no, that doesn't matter that much. You always find a man riding you home. Can you imagine the panic in the face of the mother? So that's the story that's going to be told, that the future vision of mobility must solve that problem. Go to the mothers of the world and ask them what they want to have for their children. That's the most important thing. That's the future.